Hello. All right. Today I'm going to be working on or continuing on the item generation logic. So the last time I was able to get on was Monday, and we built out, let's just double check here what we have. So we created the different database tables we needed. So I think we have 4. There is a base item table, and then a generated item table. And then we also have that for the modifier. So there's a base modifier. These are like the catalog of items that the game can pick from. And then the items that actually show up in the game are the ones that get generated and stored in these tables, the generated item and then the generated item modifier tables. So generated item contains the item ID or the base item ID. And then there's a link on the modifiers to that generated item ID that links those back to that item. So you're going to have the base item stats, and then you'll have a number of modifiers based on the rarity of the item. So a more rare item will have more modifiers on it. So that's what we're going to work on today, is a method to actually generate an item. So we need to, let's go into the item service. And this is all on the back end. If you're new to my channel, this game that we're working on is a strategy RPG. And we're making it like an authoritative server model. So all of the game logic and outcomes will be determined by the server. And then the data will get passed to the front end, which is a Unity3d client. And that will display all the updates. And then of course the players can click buttons and stuff to interact with the game, and that data will pass to the server and be determined and generated back on the back end and then passed back and forth. So this whole setup here on the back end, we're using Java, and we're using RPC services. So that stands for remote procedure call. And we're mainly just making a link to the Unity client with this streaming setup. It's kind of like a WebSocket in a way, and it will either stream a one-time response of data, or it can stream a constant stream of data, like we did in our combat when we set that up. So the combat object, or the combat loop, I mean, every 250 milliseconds will send a new update from the server to the client. But on a call like this that we're getting ready to work on to generate an item, that's just going to be like a one-time response type object. So very similar to like a REST client in a web application. We just have to set up the proper request and response objects, and then we pass the data to the server through that method call. It does its thing and generates the item through the logic we generate and create, and then it'll pass that back to the user, as well as stored in the database. So let's see. So we have, I think I do remember when we quit on Monday, it was kind of to the point where we had built a way to return one of these items to the user through this RPC call, this get item info. Now we haven't actually created the service call or the service method that will generate an item. This is more of a way of just gathering all the data from the database, converting it into the proper RPC object type that we're using and then passing it to the Unity client. And then on that end, we can take all of that data and do something with it eventually. But for today, what I want to work on, and maybe we'll get to some of the Unity side, but initially I want to create the method that will generate an item. So let's call this let's see, it's going to end up returning a generated item. And then we can just say generate item. And parameters for now will just be maybe item level. So the item level is not necessarily matching like the character level in the game. It's just more of a way to rank the items that we create. And by doing it this way, we can generate something based on what the player's party has destroyed. So if they're in like a level 3 area, maybe the item levels that can be dropped are between levels 1 and 5 or something. So maybe what we should do here is like a low. We'll pass in the low item level and the high item level. And then the logic in here, first of all, we need to pull a list of all base items that could be generated. So we're mainly just going to do a query into the base item database, base item table, for anything matching between high and low item levels. Okay, once we have that list of items, let's randomly pick an item from the list, and then we're going to kind of do the same thing. So we're going to look at how, let's look at rarity of item to decide how many modifiers we need to generate. So maybe an uncommon item is the first one above normal, and maybe that one gets 1 modifier, and then maybe we'll have a rare item and that would have 2, and an epic item might have 3, and a legendary might have 4. Let's kind of go with that as our first rare would be 2 mods. Actually, let's do this a little different. Let's do let's make common have 1 mod, uncommon 2 mods, rare 3 mods, epic 4 mods, and then legendary would be 5 mods. And I think those are the different types we have so far. Let me double check the database for the test data and see what we created. I remember we created about 10 items. Oh, we have a junk. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I skipped epic, but I named 1 junk. So I almost want to just change this. I want this to be common. I'm already changing my decisions here, I know. I want to include something called epic. Just changing all these and getting rid of that junk kind. I just didn't like the junk category. It didn't make complete sense. Common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary. And we have one in each category. Okay, let's update the database with that. So no matter what, even if it's a base item, it will at least generate one modifier, and that way we can test this out. And there'll be at least some randomization on every single item in the game, which I kind of like that as well. Okay, so we need to also, and I don't think we've done this in the database yet, but we need to pull back the catalog of available modifiers based on item level. So we're still going to use that same item level that we're passing in, but based on the level of the item, we'll determine the level of the modifiers that are available. So if it's a level 5 item, maybe it can only add between 1 and 2 to damage. But if it's a level 50 item, it might be able to add between, who knows, like 20 to 50 damage or something crazy, much higher because it's a much higher level item. So we'll have to add some values to table to test. So we're going to pull back the catalog of available modifiers. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say loop for each modifier, randomly pick one and generate the value. Okay. And then pretty much at this point, we just say assemble item, save to database, and I guess that's more than one step. So we'll say assemble the item into the generated item type. And then we need to save, which it might not be in this method, but I'm just going to put this here, kind of the steps we're going through. Save the item to the database. 4 different tables. Well, actually it's 2. I should say 2 different tables. Generated item and generated modifiers should be updated. And then pass the generated item back to the player. So that's all the steps we need to work on here to finish what we need for the item process. So pull a list of all base items that can be generated. So we're going to have to create a named query, or pretty much just a custom query in the repository for the base item DB table. So let's go in that base item repository. And let's double check that one, the table. So we do have the item level in here. And mainly what we're going to do is just create a custom query that does a between statement. So it's going to say between the low value and the high value that I passed in. So if I pass in 1 to 5, then it should pick up anything, including the 1 and the 5, the way that I need to write the query. So it should pick up 4 rows with that 1 to 5 object. Just as an example. So let's do that. So in here, we're going to do, I'm just looking up the syntax. We can use a named query, or we can use, I don't know why I can't remember what it's called. I think in here it's just @query. And then in here we have to do, is it value equals, and then I write the query, I think. So I'm going to select all rows from, and this needs to be the name of the class. So it's base item DB. We'll just call it base item. Where item dot level between and then I need to look up how do I bring in the parameter. I think it's like this. So low item level and high item. And then this is going to return a list of base item DBs. And we'll call this find all by, or maybe between maybe we can just say by item level. No, it doesn't like that. I mean, it doesn't have to. We can name this whatever we want. Find all between item level low and high. And then we need to pass in the low item level and the high item level. It's not getting mad. I'm not positive this is the right syntax for this though. This might be a runtime error that we get. Oh, it doesn't like asterisk here. I think we just say base item. I think that's right. Okay, so there's the query. We need to import the repository. Oh, we already have it. Good. So we're making a list of base items, DB, base item, DB items. We'll call this base item catalog. And then we're going to use our base item repository dot find all between low and high. And we're going to pass in that low item level and high item level. Okay. And we can change this to like a generate item request object. Put those in there. And that way, if we have any other changes that need to happen to this request object, we don't have to change this method signature. So let's do that. I think that'll be a little bit cleaner. Excuse me. Actually, this will be tied to the RPC call anyway. So let's make sure we have that. We might not have that yet. Yeah, we don't. So we need to create a new call, generate item. And we're just going to call this generate item request. And it will return the generated item once it's done. And then so to generate an item, what data do we need to send in? Let's double check the database too, because we might need certain data for it to generate the item, and we need to make sure we bring that in right now. How does the generated item link back to a player right now? And maybe we haven't gotten that far. I think how that will work is they'll have an inventory, and that inventory will link to the unique generated item ID. But the generated item ID itself doesn't need a reference to that player. All right, let me think. I think since we don't need, at least for this step, we don't need to know anything about the player. Really, all we're doing is generating item based on a high and low item value. Maybe eventually we'll be we'll be able to send in more customization, like maybe a specific type of gear should be generated, or there could even be like loot tables with specific items. I think this is good for now. I really don't think we need more than the high and low item levels. That should be enough to generate an item. So let's just pass in those two values. So we'll say low item level, high item level. Those are the two parameters within this request type. And that should be all we need. So while we're looking at the other code, I'm going to generate that real quick. And then over here, this will change to a, what did I call it? I called it generate item, so I've already got the right name, although I have to make it lowercase to match the way it works. And this will be an override. And then this needs to go away. And we're passing in a what are we passing in? We're passing in the generate item request. And then it's a stream observer. It's going to return a generated item. Response. All right, and then over here, we should now have access to this. So we're going to just grab this out of the request object. All right. And because this is an RPC call, it has to be public because it's being called by the client. All right. Query the base item table for anything matching between high and low. That's what we just did. Yeah. These are both doing the same thing. I don't know why I wrote this twice. Full a list of all base items. Randomly pick an item from the list. So let's just pick a single base item. So base item DB, base item equals, oh, what is the code to pick? Let's see. Looking up the recommended way to pick a random value out of this list, which I mean, I could just do a random number from 0 to the size and just do it that way. That's probably the best way. So I need to create the random seed generator thing. Like that. And then pretty much just grab an index, like I said. We'll just say the random index. And the size of the catalog. And once we get that, we should just be able to pull that item back. So now we have our random picked item. And then we need to do like a little switch statement here to determine how many modifiers to roll. So we're looking at the base item db dot get rarity. And we just have a case for each thing. Uncommon. Rare. Epic. Legendary. And then before this, we'll just put modifier count. Modifier count equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we have our modifier count now based on that value. Based on the rarity, I mean. All right. Now we need to do the same thing for the available modifiers, which means we're going to have to create some test data here for the modifiers. So let's see. Let's go to this table. Make this bigger so we can see all of the values. We'll say strength, even though that's not adjusting anything. Well, let's change that. Let's change it to damage. And we'll make one for defense. That's the only two values we're currently using. So let's just create a few different versions of this. Let's say it can be 1 to 2 for an item modifier level of 3. And this is modifying the damage attribute. And the defense the same way, 1 to 2. This is modifying the armor attribute. We'll say that's also a level 3. And then let's make this one 3, or let's make it 2 to 4. Damage again, but this item level we'll say is 7. And the defense, let's do the same thing, 2 to 4. We'll say that's item modifier level 8. And then this last section, we'll say, we'll just keep doubling it. We'll say 4 to 8 damage. We'll say this is level 12. 4 to 8 defense. We'll say that's a level 14. So now we at least have some base stats in here. We don't really, we almost need more than this. Let's add one for HP. We'll just spell out hit points here. We'll say, oh, how much hit points do they have right now? We'll say between 4 and 8. I don't remember what I called this, base HP. I don't know how we're going to determine where these go yet. I need to create an enum. I'm just going to put HP there for now. We'll say this is a level 5 item modifier level. Let's do another one. Let's say this one is 7 to 12 hit points. We'll say this is a level 9 modifier. Let's make this one maybe 10 to 16. We'll make this a level 13 modifier. Now we have a little more to work with here. What else can we do? Maybe we'll do one that doesn't have something across all the levels. So maybe attack speed, you won't even get the lowest value increase. And for this one, we're modifying by milliseconds. So let's say, oh, how do I want to do this? Maybe between 100 and 200 millisecond speed increase. And we'll say this is item modifier level 12, and that's the only one we'll put in here for now. I guess since we aren't even using it, but we will eventually, let's put mana as an option. And let's kind of do the same thing. Let's start off the first one. Let's say it gives 2 to 4. Or 1 to 2, I mean. We'll say it, but we'll say that one starts at level 7. So there's nothing low level. Not real low level anyways. And we'll create one more entry for this between 2 and 4. Make that level 15. All right, that might be enough test data to at least see that this is working. So let's create these records. And then go back to our code, our logic here. So we're going to have to do the same thing here that we did with the base item table. We're going to have to create a custom query first. In the base item modifier repository, we can pretty much copy what we did over here because it's going to be very similar. Just to save us a few minutes. But instead of this, we're going to use base item modifier db, and we'll just call this base mod. Same here. Should have just refactored that, but it's okay. Okay, let's double check the table to see what the values are. Item modifier level. I just had to see what this value needed to be. Item modifier level between low and high item numbers. Okay. Find all. Oh, this is wrong. Base item modifier db. And this should just read like find all mods between. And that other one should really read find all items. Okay. Okay, so we should be able to create the list now. The list of base item modifier db, base mods, mod list, catalog. That's what I used for the top section, right? I called it a catalog. Base item mod catalog equals base item modifier repository dot find all mods between low and high, and the same thing, the request get high and get low levels. All right, so now we have a list of any that we can choose from, and we need to create a loop. Actually, we need to create a list to store these in too. So we'll call these generated item modifier. We'll say generated item modifiers. And then we want to create a loop. So it'll be starting at 0, less than modifier count, and increment. Okay. And then we mainly just want to do what we did to generate an item above. But now we need to generate a mod. So we already have our random. The only difference I want to do here is I'm going to create a rule where you can't have two of the same mods rolled. So if we roll a damage mod, we should not be able to roll another damage mod. So I'll have to look at this. We'll randomly choose one, and we'll put it in a loop where it says if the item modifier attribute has already been picked. So we'll have to do a way to look through what's already in the list. So if the item modifier attribute on this one we just randomly selected matches one that's in the generated mods list already, then we'll just loop through and we'll generate another random until we get some that don't have any. And eventually we'll have a much bigger library here. So right now, if we had something that was epic or legendary, but it was this low a level, I don't have enough entries in here right now for them to all be different because we really only have 1, 2, 3, 4. We do have 5 different types, but just barely. So, but eventually we'll be modifying a lot of different things, not just these few values here. Okay. So we're in the loop. We need to random mod index random dot next int base item mod catalog dot size. Oops. Mod catalog dot size. And this is the part we're also going to have to put in another. It'll be like a while loop. So while something. Not sure what that is yet. So we have the random index. And then we need to create this new item modifier from that random index, but we also need to if base item modifier db get modifier attribute I might have to create a separate method here because we're actually going to have to loop through that unless there's a way. Let's see, is there a way to do that? Generated modifiers dot contains. Yeah, but it's the whole object. I want to just check if it contains just. Yeah. Yeah, I think we just need a custom method here. So it'll read private boolean. Is attribute unique, and we need to pass the base item modifier object, and then we also need to pass the list of generated item modifier. Okay. So now we need to loop through that and say if base item modifier db dot get item modifier attribute dot equals the generated item modifier dot get We don't have attribute in this right now anyways. This table I can get the base item modifier, but that doesn't keep us from having two of the same attributes. Hmm. I don't really want to hit the database. Do I? I mean, that's a lot of calls. What if we have a list of 100 items that it's picking from? We don't want to make 100 different calls from the database. We do already have the list of items up here because we're making this based off of the same item levels. Should I just pass this in as well? I think we need to add another field for this. Since we're doing logic this way, we don't want to make this so difficult on ourselves. So let's create another column in the generated item modifier. And it's just going to be generated item modifier attribute. That way we can do our logic here. We don't have to do any really crazy funky stuff. Now, since we did that, what do we need to update? So we have a generated item. Modifier. We just need to add that one additional value. So it's going to be string generated item modifier attribute. Okay. I don't think we need this anywhere else because this is already included with the generated item. Okay, so that should be good there. We will have to run that install again to update the proto file and the generated files so that this get works. We want to see that it has a new thing that says get the attribute. Okay. Hopefully it got far enough that it generated them. I don't know if it did or not. No, it did not. I just need this to generate. Okay, is that enough to get this to generate? I need to return something. Go away. Trying to get rid of all the red squigglies so I can generate this. Now we should be able to do this. Generate an item modifier db dot get. No, I didn't put it in the database. That's it probably would have worked before that. This one needs the new value. Generated item modifier attribute. It's a string. All right. There we go. All right. So if it, what are we trying to do here? We're just returning a Boolean. So if it matches, is attribute unique? So the way I wrote that, it should only be true if it doesn't find anything in this loop. So it's going to loop through this whole thing. If the if statement is ever true, meaning it found a match, then return false. It's not unique. Otherwise, return true. Okay. So up here where we said we're going to get rid of this. That's right, because we created this. So we want to say if is attribute unique. And then we just need to pass in the base item. And the generated item modifiers list. Okay, if it is unique, then we need to generate the value for this. So there is a int value equals random dot what is it? Next int and this will be excuse me. This will be the base item modifier dv dot get low or no, wait, get high value minus base item modifier get low value. So if it's 8 or 4, like the 4 is the low, 8's the high, it's going to do 8 minus 4 is 4. Plus the low value, but that could go one too high, right? 8 minus 4 is 4, plus the low value of 4. It'd still work out. I think that's right. I think my logic is right. Plus base item modifier get low value. So it could generate 0 up to 4. And then we'll add 4. So it could be 4 to 8. So I think that comes out. All right, so we have the value. That's the only generated part we have to do. What other things do we have to do here? So we need the item ID. We need the generated item ID, and we won't have that until we make a save to to this table. So we have a value, the base item modifier ID, which we do have in this object right now. We just generated the value. We know which attribute it is. So the only thing we have to do still to be able to make this record is we have to make the initial base item record first, because we need this ID to link this back to. So up here where we decided on the item, right here. So this is where we need to go ahead and make this. We can call this, it'll be a base item DB still. Or no, it's not. It's got to be a generated item. Generated item DB. Okay. Then we just need to, what values do we have to set? Because I don't think there's much in this table. This is literally just a link to the base item and then the generated modifiers. And one of these, so the generated item ID is generated. The base item ID is what we need to pass in, and that's it. So we'll just say set base item ID equal to the base item DB dot get base item ID. And then we need to save this and get the value back. So generated item DB saved item equals generated item repository dot save. All right. So after this happens, we should now have the generated item ID that we need. So down here now, we have this new value called saved item. And this is where we know, in this if statement, we know we've got a value that we want to save to it. So we generated a value. Now we need to create a generated item modifier DB. And we just need to set the values. So set the attribute. Okay. And then set the value. That's what we just generated. We need to set the generated item ID, which is in that saved item up above. There should be one more. Set the base item modifier ID. Okay. All right, so there's all of that. We're creating a list, but we also want to save this to the database at this point, right? Are we safe to do the save to the database? Or do we want to do that later on? I mean, down here I said save the item to the database, but we didn't realize we needed the generated item ID. So that's why we did that first step. Assemble the item into the generated item type and pass it back. I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and add this. Once we've gotten this far, we know it's unique and it's something we want to add. So let's go ahead and just do it here. We're going to do the we're going to do a generated item modifier DB saved item, just like it did there. And now that's what we want to add to the list thing here, the generated modifiers. So it's saved in the database and we added it to this list that we're generating so that we can use that to create this item right here. The only other thing we need to do here is so we have this loop in a loop. If I put true here, it would infinitely loop, but I think we can tell it to break. I think that will get out of this loop. I think. Do statement does not loop. Do I have the wrong syntax for this? That is very possible. Or is it do until? I don't know what I want to use here. What do you mean it does not loop? It should loop infinitely. I mean, I can do it. So for each loop through the modifier count, it reassigns it false to start, and then if it finds one, then it sets it to true. Otherwise, it's just going to keep looping, right? Is unique is always true. Why is it always true? What am I missing here? Do Oh, I'm missing a parentheses here. It was probably fine the other way. While it's false is when I want it. It needs to keep looping while false. Am I reading that right? I think so. So it needs to loop if it's false. Once it's true, that makes this statement false. And we should break out. All right. So now we technically have the item generated and in the database now, but we have to do this next part where we actually create the generated item. And we don't need this anymore because we've already done this step. This is slightly more complex than some of our other object types so far because we have multiple tables defining this object. So we're going to need the builder. So let's get that ready to go. So generated item.builder. And let's look and see what we need to set. We have to set the base item. The generated item ID. The list of modifiers. And that should be it. So We need an additional builder for the base item, I think. So base item builder, right? Base item dot builder. Okay. And then base item builder dot set. What do we got here? We have a bit there. And where are we going to get that? So we're going to say dot set. Should this be in our, we should have our conversion thing. But this is where I was saying it gets a little more complicated because we're passing in more than one. So we've already done the conversion from a generated item DB to the generated item. Is that what we're doing right now? I think it is. I mean, we need the other conversion, but I think actually if we pass in, we're going to pass in the generated item, the base item, the base item modifiers, and the generated item modifiers. I don't know why we need the base item modifiers. What did we do down there with those? Oh, you actually set the base item modifier in the object. Okay. Fair enough. So really, we've already got the method we need to do what I'm doing. So let's clean all this up. I forgot that we have that conversion already. And then this will just read generated item equals convert generated item DB to generated item. And then we need to pass in the, I already forgot. So the generated item base item modifiers, and generated item modifiers. Okay. So this will be generated item DB. This will be base item DB. This will be, now do I actually have this list? Oh, I do. It's the catalog. The base item, no. Is it the catalog? I don't know if I have this list that it's asking for. Because this is the list of all possible modifiers. Let's go back up to the conversion and see how that works. Find base item modifier by ID. Well, that'll still work. We can still pass it in because it does this to figure out which one it needs to pull. So we just need to send it a list and it will determine the right ones to add. So I think our base item modifier catalog is good there. And then this will be our generated item modifier. In theory, that's what we need to create a generated item. And now we want to pass the generated item back to the player. So this is easy. This is the response object. We didn't create a response object. We're just returning the generated item. So this is literally all we need here. Okay. Except we call this response observer. All right. That looks good. So now we have a way to generate an item and get it back to the user. All right. So let's see. First of all, let's make sure everything compiles. Make sure we don't have any errors. But we should be able to start messing with the Unity side now. We'll probably just create a test button for now. And let's see if we can generate some items. Maybe we'll pass in an item level. Or I guess we got to pass the low and the high item levels in. So we'll make a couple quick inputs for those. Or we might even just do it manually because we're just testing this. And then send that call back to the server. Let's put a let's make sure we put a log in here so we know that it's been hit and that it's running. Generating item between levels. And then the first one is request.getLow, request.getHigh. All right, so that'll give me a log to show that it received it and it's got the right data that we sent. Build was successful. Let's see if the server will start or if I missed anything. Cool. Start it up. So we have to regenerate the proto file stuff for Unity. So let's do that. Yeah, that's it. All right. And let's go to the Unity client, which it's compiling since I just changed those settings. Or I just updated those files. So we'll give it just a second here. And it should pop up. Here it goes. Okay. All right, in Unity, we're in the combat scene. Let's just create a button. And the button will output, for now, for this very first test step, just output a debug log so we can see that it generated an item. So let's duplicate this play pause button. And let's call it generate item button. And we'll rename it. Generate item. And we need to move it so it's not overlapping. Okay. And then in the action panel controller script, we just need to add a reference to this call. And then we'll add a debug so that we know what was returned. Just as a first step to make sure that this is working as intended. And as far as my to-do list, we're on this step here. We're generating the item generation logic. We're creating this temp button just to generate an item as a test. So as soon as we're done with this and it's generating items as we're expecting it to, we're going to get to move on to this new these next two steps will probably be kind of together a little bit, but we're going to create this equipment object for the heroes that will store which equipment they have equipped. And it needs to, of course, update their stats appropriately. So if one of these modifiers says plus 10 to HP, it needs to add that and be utilized correctly in combat. So there'll be some refactoring there since we don't have a notion of modified values yet, but that'll be part of that process. And then, of course, I want to create some kind of UI, which the asset we're using for the heroes does come with kind of an inventory management system. I'm sure it needs built out to match our setup, but I think that's a good start. So when we get to that step, we're going to try to utilize some of the stuff they've already started with to speed that step up a little bit, hopefully. But once we get those, what is it, 3 or 4 steps there, I mean, we'll have generated equipment and the ability to equip it or unequip it. So that'll be cool. All right, so in here, we're going to create an additional call. And it'll just be generate item click. We're going to link that up to that button we just made. And in here, we just want to make a call, get the data back, and put a debug for now just to test it. So first of all, we're going to have to update our, what is it, the network manager, the game server. We got to create the client. We haven't done that yet either for this new item. So it'll be item client. And then we want to, let's just mimic one of these other clients that's already set up so we don't miss any steps. This will be item service. Service client. Copy this. We'll have to change the client, but I think the channel record is the same. And then down here, instead of this reading what it reads, it'll just read item service dot item service client. Okay. And then what methods? Why do I have? Okay. What methods did we create? I think there's just two. They both return generated items. So one is called get item. Is it get item info? We can look at the proto to see. Get item info and generate item. So get item info. And we have to push in the get item info. And we just need to pass in the ID. Generated item request. Get generated item request. Should just be looking for the ID, right? Generated item ID. Generated item ID. Is it because I have the underscores that it's acting different? What am I doing here? Generated item ID. Oh, I'm doing this in the wrong spot. My goodness. That could be the issue here because we're not actually interacting with the server yet. So this is just long generated item ID. Down here, when we attach to the client, that's where we should be doing get item info. And if we paste this in, now I bet it finds the item ID like I expected it to. It only takes me 2 or 3 days. And I like lose track sometimes of the syntax and stuff. All right. Anyways, this will be generate item. And for this, we're passing in two numbers. So a low item level and a high item level. Oops, that's also an integer. And then down here, generate item, new generate item request, and then low item level equals low item level equals high item level equals high item level. Okay. We could probably create a really quick test interface that would have a few text fields that we can populate with some stuff about the item. I don't think that'd be too hard. We'll just drop them on this action panel controller for now. So let's create a text mesh pro u GUI called item name. I don't think we have item description. Let's make this item level. Item type would be a good one to include. Actually, we can do item level and we'll just call it item level type and type. So item name, item level, and type. I kind of want to see the mods too, although that might be a little more complexity. Let's call this one item stats. Item mods. All right. Even if, I mean, we'll use this as a test, but then if this works, we can kind of copy this to another UI element and still use it. So, okay, so we made 4 text boxes. So let's create those in Unity now. Let's just drop that kind of right here in the middle. If it'll let me. It should. We'll just create a new UI element. We'll say a panel. We'll call this an item card. Just as a test object for now. And then in here, we're going to create texts. We'll call this item name. We need to change the size of this card. It needs to be much smaller. So something like that. Eventually we'll build this out and make it look pretty. For now, let's throw the item name on the top and center it. We'll allow it to get bigger. And then under that, let's duplicate that. Call this item type and level. Let's move that down. Type and level. And this is the item name. And then we need another one. This will be called, let's make this one a little bigger. And actually those other ones might need to be smaller. This one will be called item stats. So if it's a weapon, it should default to damage, the low dash to the high damage, and the attack speed. If it's armor, it should show the defense and resist and block, as long as they're not 0, I guess. That needs to be, we only want this one to get up to like 36 max size. Then this one the same way. We'll make this one max of 48. And the item name should be bold. And then the stats, let's duplicate that one more time, and this is going to be called item mods. Let's move that down. And right there, so it's not overlapping. Let's make this card itself just slightly bigger, because the item mods could be a much longer list than what we're making room for. Let's move all this up. And I guess if I'm doing this right, I might as well anchor these. So hopefully if it's resized, it should be okay. Item stats now, that should just be right there. And then the item mods will take up the rest of the space. This is good enough for a test. Now eventually, I mean, we'll have a better UI background and we'll have a coloring scheme based on the rarity of the item. And we'll have an image of the icon for the item. Okay, that looks good. So let's check the action panel. Let's pass all these guys in. Item name, item level and type, item stats, item mods. Okay. And then we're just going to create a update item UI. And in here, now we need to actually do this other part here. So we're going to have to create a create our generated item. And then down here, we can set it generated item equals game server dot instance dot item client. Where's my item client? Let's go check that and see what I did wrong. Oh, I didn't actually add it to there yet. We created the client, but I didn't add it to the game server. So that's easy enough to do. Item client equals new item client. Okay, back over here. Dot item client dot generate item. And I guess for now we're just gonna hard code these values. We'll say the first one will be between item level 1 and 5 for a generated item. And then once we generate the item, we just need to update the item UI. Generated item, update item UI. And then down here, we're going to say the item name dot text equals generated item dot base item dot name. And then item type or level and type dot text equals, let's do level space generated item base item level plus space plus generated item, base item, not level, dot type. Okay. Then we need to do a little bit of logic to figure out what kind of item it is. So we should be able to look at the item, not item, generated item, dot base item dot item type, case of armor, and there's also a case of weapon. That's all we have so far anyways. Okay. That should determine what stats we populate in the item stats. So if it's the armor, we want to put item stats dot text equals defense generated item dot it's in the base item, right? Base item dot armor dot defense plus, can I do /n in this? I don't know. Resist base item dot armor dot resist and block. Dot block. Okay, so that's how the armor will look. Now let's do a weapon. Will show damage low damage to, it's not two, but it's a dash, right now the attack speed is set in milliseconds. That's okay. We can still show it in here that way, and eventually we'll clean it up so it reads better. It reads in seconds instead of milliseconds. For now, we can just pass that in, base item dot weapon dot attack speed. And we'll just say milliseconds. Okay. So that's our weapon or armor. And then what was the other one? Oh, the mods. Yeah, for the mods, how do I want to do this? So I'm going to have to loop because that's a list. Okay, let's see. So we're going to do mod stats. What's it called? What the heck was that called? Item mods. Sorry, item mods. dot text equals nothing to start, and then for each generated item modifier mod in generated item dot modifiers. Okay. And then for this, I want to say the text. So I made the text in here in the table. Let's look at it. Or it's in the base item modifier, isn't it? So the description is what I want to use. I want to say damage maybe just the plus sign and then the value is what I'm looking at here. So modifier description, the plus sign, and then the modifier, the value is actually in the generated item, or generated item modifier table is where value's at. Okay, let's see if we can figure this out. So we want to say item mods dot text dot append. Can I do that? Can I append like text? No, I can't. That's not what that means. I can probably do this though. Plus equals whatever it is now plus whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to say the generated item. Nope, not that. The modifier, the mod dot base item modifier dot description plus the plus sign, and then I need the generated item value. And then I also want to add a new line modifier. So for each loop through, it should add the item and the modifier, or the value and the description. Maybe that'll work. All right. Now we need to set this generate item click on the button that we created, and we're just about ready to test. We're going to switch this to the new one. Generate item click is the method that button will trigger. I think we already set the references to those new fields. We did. The server's running. It is. All right, let's push play now. It shouldn't start combat because we already have that default pause state. It will show all the combat guys up there, but we're not interacting with that right now. Right now we're just looking at this new box we just created. All right. So far no errors, but we haven't done anything yet. So we're going to try to generate and see what shows up. All right. Let's see. That was a server error, so let's see what it's getting mad about. No enum constant. Generating item between levels 1 and 5. So we got that far, but then down here, excuse me. Set low damage, set damage type. No enum constant. All right. Damage type, value of base item DB get damage type. Base item DB get damage type. Right now I just have a string in there. Is that making it mad? I think it is. Weapon stats builder. Let's go check out item proto. Damage type. So we did make an enum at least in physical underscore damage. Magical underscore damage is what those read. So let's wait, what was the other one? Because we also need to make an NA. Let's change this to match what I have in the database. So physical, magical, or NA. Physical or magic is what I have in the database. Or NA. And that unfortunately is in our proto file, so we're going to have to rebuild this real quick. I think I tried to do the conversion in the service, but because those weren't matching up, it's saying value of, but the value of didn't match anything in the enum types. So I think that's why it got mad. Everything's red because I have to regenerate the classes. I just deleted them all by doing a clean. They'll all turn normal once it regenerates the classes. Okay. Start the server back up. We need to copy. We need to rerun these updates. Although I don't think it changes anything on the client, we still need to make sure they sync up and are the same on both sides. So we also need to stop this from running. Okay, server is starting. Server is running. Start this up again and see if that fixed that error at least. Generate item. Look at that. The type and level. No, that's not the type and level, that's the stats. So the stats didn't update, but it looks like the rest of it did. Now some of these stats, I mean, I might need to add some more logic because I guess it doesn't make sense for armor probably to have +1 damage on it. But this level 5 medium armor, was that uncommon? It was. So that's why it generated 2 different stats. Let's try that again. Let's check the generated item table too to make sure it stored it. We actually have 2. So the first time through it generated the item at least. I don't know if it generated the modifiers. The time where it broke because of the enum. And then this time it generated there. And then the modifiers. Oh, that it even generated those for that first item. Cool. And you can see here, this one we just did, it generated a damage and an armor attributes. Let's generate another one. Or let's go ahead and stop and try to look at why the type and the level's not working. It's probably my switch statement isn't matching up to the data. So right now I was comparing it to what? The item type, wasn't it? Really what I wanted was the item slot. That's where I messed up. So I need item slot and not item type in that switch statement. Base item dot item slot case. What does case mean? Is that because it's a one of case? Is that, I don't think that's gonna work. Do I have to pass the actual value? Item slot case armor. I guess that's what I gotta do. And then down here it would be weapon. Okay, it's a little bit different syntax in C# versus Java, so it was messing with me there, but I think that's what it's saying to do. Let's try it and see if that works. Did I change? I did change it to, yeah, item slot case. Okay. I think that'll work. Start it. And let's generate another item. There we go. Now I mean, the UI itself is yucky looking, but it's pulling in all the data sets now. It's pulling in, this is only a level 1 sword, which was a common item, which only has 1 modifier. Again, the modifiers might not make sense because we don't have it looking at any other logic right now. It's just pulling a random one. But it shows the damage, the attack speed, and then what level it is, what type it is. Cool. Now let's try to generate a higher level item. So let me go into the database real quick and see what we actually have available for levels here. We have item levels between 1 and 50. Let's just tell it to generate something between item levels 10 and 50. I mean, in the game that wouldn't make sense, but for this testing, that works just fine. That way we get something a little bit higher level and just see that that part works. So we got to stop this because we didn't add a way to set what these values are except in the code. So over here, we're just going to change this to 10 and 50. So now it should be picking from about 5 or 6 different items instead of just a few. There's 10 total, and we're taking 4 out of the mix with this filter, so there's still 6 that it'll pick from. So it'll either be these 3 or these 3 is what should be pulled back. All right, let's go back in there. All right, silver sword, and it has 3 modifiers. All right, let's do it again. Another silver sword. Let's do it again. Sword of light. Now that one has 4 modifiers. There we go. That's one. That's a legendary. So it has 5 modifiers. Level 50. And it has a whole lot of stats. Attack speed 103. Oh yeah, because that adds between 100 and 200 attack speed, I think. Very cool. And it's accurately picking unique attributes. So none of these are overlapping. All right, that is a big step. We now have a way to generate items. Now, we can mark one of these guys off. It's always nice when we can mark a line item off of our list here. Ever closer to this Thanksgiving stretch goal. I don't know if I'm going to get all of these done, but really once we get to, I don't know, I'd say somewhere down here, we can still have a play test start. We'll do some play testing once we get at least some interaction with the player. A lot of the stuff we're doing right now, we still don't have a way to interact with the game and actually change any results. So I want to get at least to the point where we can use skills and cast skills. And I think at that point, we're getting to the point where we'll start doing some play tests. Very, very alpha play test. There's not going to be anything as far as a game yet. This is mainly just play testing all these initial functionalities we're building out. Let's go ahead and get started on this. I don't know how much longer I can go today because I have a few other things I need to do, but we got a little bit of time. So let's start working on this next step. So we want to create an equipment object. And we're going to place that equipment on heroes. And then we need to make sure we create some kind of system to update the hero stats accordingly. Okay. Let me stop the Unity side. All right, so over here in the unit for a hero unit, we have this list of equipped items. And it's just a list of generated items, which we just figured out how to do. So this was a big step, being able to create this generated item. Now we have to figure out how to add those items to the hero. This might have to change a little bit. And what I mean by that is there's definitely specifics on what's in this list. It's not an expandable list per se. It's a finite list of item slots that are in here. So instead of repeated, we might create a new object for the equipped items. And in there, we should store all the various slots, I think. So let's put this here. Let's just call this equipped. All right. And this will be, all of these will be generated items. But for now, I mean, we're going to have an armor and a weapon. As far as our playtest is concerned, that's the only data we have. We have weapon and we have an armor slot. So for now, that's what we'll have 2 slots available per hero. And they can equip 1 armor and they can equip 1 weapon. And that's where those 2 will go. So then up here, instead of repeated, this will just become equipped. What was it called? Items? I shouldn't have deleted that because now I don't know what it was and I don't feel like changing it on the other spots. All right. So this will read equipped items. Okay. All right. And then since we just updated the hero unit, we're going to have to update let's go to the database because that'll be another step here. So we have a hero. And that just lists all their stats. All right. So we need a new table. We're going to call this equipped. This needs to tie the item, the generated item, to the hero and the slot, I guess. Because there could be, like, for example, we might have more than one ring slot. So we need to tie it to a specific slot. So we're going to need, what do we need here? We need the hero ID. And we need, well, we do need a, we'll just call this equipped ID. It's just to create a unique identifier so things work out correctly. We can probably do that a different way, but that's good for now. So hero ID, generated item ID. And then we also want to know I guess just call it slot. Equipped slot, maybe. And we'll store that in the database as a string. It'll end up being an enum in the server. I mean, it already is an enum in the server because that's what we just did on that last step. We saw that we had either armor or weapon options. Let's see, is that all we need? Okay. Now, let's manually, in the database, let's manually put some entries in this table to give at least one of our heroes equipment. And that way we can validate that things have changed. So let's look in the generated item table. It's not easy to view this way because these are all just base items. I mean, I can create a view or a query that'll show us what I want to see better, probably. Let's find the the base item ID of 7 is leather armor. And then I know I saw a silver sword in there with ID of 3. So let's grab one of the generated 3 base item IDs and one of the 7s. And that's the 2 that we're going to add. So let's look at that real quick. So there's a 3. Or there's a 3. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong column. So we need generated ID 2. And we need 4. So 2 and 4. 4 is the weapon. And 2 is the armor. 2 is the armor, 4 is the weapon. Oh, we need a hero. Let's put these on Bob the fighter. Hero ID 2. All right. We're doing this manually for now, but eventually we'll have a UI, of course, that will do this for us. So generated ID 2 goes in which slot? It goes in the weapon slot, I think. And then the other one was 4, and it goes in the armor slot. We'll verify that. Let's go look. Make sure I didn't mess that up. So 3 is the silver sword, 7 is leather armor. 3, oh, 3, number 4 is the weapon, number 2 is the armor. So I think I reversed them. Yeah, 4. Yeah, I reversed them. Okay, armor, weapon. All right, so we have an equipped table with a couple entries for just testing purposes. So now we need to create this in the server, the database entity. This will be called equipped db. Just need to annotate it. Okay. You know what? We can pull this in. I don't know why I'm typing. It's just habit. Let me refresh. If it lets me refresh the data sources, we should see the new table show up. Anytime now. Um, well, I don't see the equip table. There it is. Okay, so okay, there we go. All right. So we also need the repository. That's just like the way for Java to talk to the database and pull the data back. So we called equipped repository. Annotate that. Equipped DB. All right. Now, what's the next step here? Let me think. We have a way to get to the data in the database, but we haven't defined. So we did update the gRPC object, the proto file. So we need to regenerate that next, and then we need to update the item service so that it also takes the equipped. Is it the item service or is it the hero service? I guess it might be the hero service. Wherever that equipped object is, we need to populate that. I think it's the hero service. Let's real quick regenerate the proto file stuff so that we have access to the new equipped object type that we created. Error it out because it's running. But it should have generated the file, so that's okay. Sometimes I forget to stop the server and then it does that. All right, let's close all these tabs. We got too much open. Close that down. Now we need to go into the hero service. And we're going to need access to this new repository. Equipped repository. Let's pass it in. Let's sign it. Okay. Let's see. So in here, we're creating the hero unit. So in the hero builder, we have to set the equipped. Which we'll have to get that data back, right? Let's see. Passing in a hero DB. But we're also going to have to pass in the equipped object now. And that's a list. The way we have it set up right now anyways, it's a list. What I mean by that is there's not one line per hero. And we also have to get the generated item information. Okay. I like a challenge. So this is a list. If we have this list, we should be able to create some kind of method that pulls back all of the data within, right? So we can go pull these two generated item IDs from the database. And can we use the method that we already created? Because we don't want to recreate anything if we don't have to. Let me think. So on the item service, we have get item info. This is an override though for the RPC call. So do we create an additional call that maybe is just called get equipped, and it pulls back all of the data that we need? So we need to have the modifier data, we need the item data, the generated item, and the generated modifier data. And I mean, we also need the base item since all that data is not stored in those tables, and the base modifier. So we need all four of those returned. But see, this doesn't return anything. What I want to do is create a new object. What is it going to return though? Hmm. All right, so the equipped has reference to the generated item ID, which takes us here. And from here, we can link the generated item ID to a base item ID. We can take that base item ID and get all the base data. And then we also can go into the generated item modifiers and link up the item ID to pull the list of those. And these also reference the base item modifiers, so we can pull those as well. And that'll give us the description and I guess that's the main thing we're pulling out of here is description. So yeah, we do have to pull all four for each item. What is the best way to do that? If we loop through the equipped object, hmm. So if I create, this is returning a generated item. Does that give me what I need for the database? This is kind of what I want to do. I just want to be able to pass in the hero ID. But what's it going to pass back? I mean, I say equipped. That's not really what I'm going for here. I already have equipped, right? We shouldn't be making, we for sure should not make the hero service update the items. It can delegate to the item service, but it should not be doing it itself. I know that much. So that's why I'm trying to define this method in the item service. But what do I need it to do? What am I trying to do here? I need to, so I just added the equip to this object. And what this needs to do is I need to pull in the equipped object. So I guess what I need to do is say generate equipped and pass in, what do I pass in though? What do I have at that point? Well, I have the equipped database. The list of equipped database entries is what I'm telling it I have to pass in. If I have the list of hero of the equipped DB, I mean, that should be enough to generate that, but where do I get that from? Where do I get that equipped DB list? Because again, that's managing the item side of things. Equipped items themselves don't store interesting. Equipped items, like the equipped table, does say which hero it has. Which hero has that So if I just pass hero ID to the item service, it should be able to return this list. So let's do that. So this is the item service, but we're going to do another call here, and it's going to be a list of equipped DB. Get equipped DBs. Long hero ID. Let's import that. All right. So for this one, we're going to create that new list. And then we're going to run we're going to have to create that function. So it'll read equipped DBs equals equipped repository dot find all by hero ID. And we're going to pass in hero ID. And let's tell this we want to go ahead and create this method. That's not an integer, so let's go check that in the entity. This is a long. This is also a long. Okay. All right. So that will give us that back. So now we have the list. Okay. Clean that up a little bit. I didn't need all that extra code. It was just helping me think through the process there. All right, so that should return all of the items in the equipped table. And then up here, get equipped items. All right, what was I trying to do there? Now, at this step, I'm trying to return the equipped object. And we're doing the same thing. We're passing in the hero ID. So we're going to do the same thing, I guess. We're going to get the list. It'll be, I don't want to do that. I'm going to use what I just created. Okay, so we've got that now. Convert item DB to item. but it's kind of a lie because we need all of those objects, not just one. But that's kind of what we need to do. We're not going to create a list. Hmm. All right, guys, I'm gonna think about this a little bit and try to set this up in a way that it's not too messy. But it's getting a little late. I have a couple things I need to do today. So I think this is a good spot to stop. That way I can think about this a little bit more because there is a little bit of complexity here between this equipped item object and all the different data that's stored for items. So let me think about that and figure that out. What you doing?
I have a question. Can I speak?
Yes.
Can I order pizza?
Yes.
It's $10 thin crust Thursday.
Yes.
Okay. And say something else. Oh, that's still stuck on 9 of 13.
I'll come look at it. I'm almost done here anyways. I was just getting off. Yep, let me look at this a little bit deeper, guys, and I'm hoping I can get back on tomorrow. I think I will be able to get on at least for a little bit tomorrow, and we'll continue working on this. So it'd be great if I can knock out the equipment and then this party management UI in the next few sessions. That's going to be a big step in making some customizations and like character building in the game to add that additional detail to it. So all right, I'm signing off. Talk to you guys next time.